is late June 2023 and I am in Yellowstone National Park, about to set off on a 4-day backpacking adventure. My route is a big loop around the backcountry of the Old Faithful area, and the two biggest challenges that I'm expecting to face on this trip are the weather. It's that time of year where it rains a lot, and over the next few days I have a chance of a scattered shower or a scattered storm every day. Number two will be the mosquitoes. They're out thick, and I'm sure as I head towards Mallard Lake for the day, they may get even thicker. To start off my adventure, I've got a little under 5 miles, and it's time to hit the trail. June is quite early in the season to venture into the Yellowstone backcountry. Many areas of the park are not even accessible yet. This is the earliest that I've been in the park by a good 2 months. It's been cool to see all the greenery and moisture before things dry out later on. The Mallard Creek Trail has been remarkably consistent over this first stretch. Nearly entirely uphill and nearly entirely in the trees. I just popped out to a little view on a pretty day. A nice little breeze has kicked up, which is great because even though it's only in the 60s, with the sun beating down and hauling a pack, it's still quite warm. And the wind helps keep the mosquitoes down. Well, all my climbing has been worth it. A great look down at Mallard Lake. I'll be dropping down to the shores for camp tonight. Hey-oh. I only passed 2 pairs of hikers on the trail today. The first pair worked in the park. They've been out here a couple times recently, and they reported that there is a black bear who roams the shoreline looking for food. So I have to keep an eye out for that fella. But even without that report, it's imperative to be bear smart and bear aware everywhere in Yellowstone. Gross. Look at all that pollen on the shoreline. Home sweet home. Made to campsite OB2, Mallard Lake Southeast. Beautiful little spot on this peninsula here. First order of business is to hang food and smellies. Second, get the tent set up. The common raven, the most widely distributed member of the corvid family, is known for its intelligence and problem solving and has a brain that is among the largest of any bird species. Well, there's the black bear. Only kidding, that's a bear-sized raven though. And he is probably a bigger threat to my food than that black bear is. I'm gonna have to build a fence around that raven. It's as big as a house. I've been watching this raven for a good 10 minutes. I don't think he can fly. It looks like he has a hurt wing. But he doesn't appear to be doing too bad on his own. Just saw him snatch up a little worm or something and eat that, and he's a hefty one. That raven was distracting me while these two little fellas are raiding camp. A look around camp. My tent tucked away to the right. Splendid Mallard Lake stretching out. And then the food prep and food hang area out on the peninsula. Day 1 of my backpacking adventure in Yellowstone has been a great day. The hike in was unspectacular, but Mallard Lake is a very worthwhile destination. I spent the 3 days before this in the front country of the Tetons in Yellowstone, and it's funny, I was having such a good time, I was thinking, why do I even need to go into the backcountry? And then I get out here and quickly reminded, I've got dinner in me, I'm getting settled in, And as long as that black bear doesn't come visiting, that'll be the end of day 1. Good night. Good morning. Made the day 2, my backcountry adventure in Yellowstone. Had a calm, relaxing night last night. The lows were in the upper 30s, and a little rain showers moved through in the evening and the night, so I will have to pack up a wet tent, but as long as the rain holds off until I've got camp set up, you won't hear too many complaints from me. I've got my longest mileage day of the trip today, 11 plus miles, and it'll also be a very interesting day because I'm going to pop out of the backcountry right into the middle of the Old Faithful tourist area. So I'll go from having nobody around to having thousands of people around. I'll maneuver through the upper Geyser Basin, and then I'll hop back out into the backcountry on the other side of the Old Faithful area. I'm going to get camp packed up, and there'll be time to hit the trail. Mallard Lake is smooth and serene this morning as I leave its shores. Thanks for the hospitality, Mallard. A big marshy meadow off the Mallard Lake trail. I'm making great time this morning. The Mallard Lake trail is mostly downhill from the lake and easy hiking. Rapidly approaching the Old Faithful area, I can start to hear some of the road noise, and as I pass through Old Faithful in the upper Geyser Basin, I'm not going to do too much filming. It'll be an absolute zoo of people, but I'm going to try to get at least one shot because the upper Geyser Basin is one of the most unique and incredible places on God's green earth. I can't even put into words, so hopefully I can get at least one shot to show that area. But it'll be a couple miles hiking through the front country, and then hopefully I'll break through on the other side and get back to the backcountry trails. There's a faraway look at Old Faithful. Let's take a 360-degree look at the upper Geyser Basin. Just one of those areas that there's nowhere else quite like it. Plumes of smoke everywhere you look. A landscape that looks like the moon. What a wild, wild place. I'm not sure what geyser that is, but it's popping off there in the distance. Grotto Geyser is having a little eruption right now. I'm now trekking through the Biscuit Basin. I've actually never checked out the Biscuit Basin before, so this is new territory for me. I'm getting close to popping out of the front country and getting back into the back country. The sweet, sweet air of wilderness back in my lungs. One way is an overlook, one way is the falls. I'm going to check out the falls. Mystic Falls. Falls to the right and geysers to the left. That's Yellowstone. These Torons right through the trees wanted to cut off about 30 feet of switchbacks, so instead they're sliding on all fours down a erosion trail. Interesting decision. I picked the falls route in part because I thought there'd be less climbing, but it ends up climbing all the way to the top anyways. Good views. Hopping on the Fairy Creek Trail. It says 3.3 miles to camp. The bugs have gotten thick, and I just passed a couple who said they're ravenous at my campsite. The rain has started. Hopefully it'll drizzle out quickly for me and certainly not pick up. Looks like I might be able to hike out of the storm if I keep going. There's a quaint lake through the trees right off the trail. There's the Firehole River. I must be getting close to camp because it sounds like the Firehole Falls are not far away. Home sweet home. Made the campsite OD3, Firehole Falls. The rain, which has been off and on for the last several hours, is on again. So time to hang my food and get the tent set up. Yellowstone National Park contains nearly 60% of the entire world's geysers. Old Faithful earns its name by being one of only 6 that the Park Service is able to predict. During a mostly lull in the rain, here is Firehole Falls. Now that I'm set up, let's take a quick look around camp. There's my tent to the right. And then over here is the food hang and food prep area. Down there is the Firehole River. The rainstorm has turned into a mixture of hail. Day 2 has been a good day despite the appearance of both of the biggest challenges called out at the start of the trip. It rained for a good portion of the day, and it also had a little brief hailstorm, and the mosquitoes have been out in full force. However, I got to accomplish some great hiking, and going through those Geyser Basin areas are just really unique in that special part of Yellowstone. I'm getting settled in. Hopefully the rain will move out, and that'll be it for day 2. Good night. Good morning. Made to day 3 in the Yellowstone backcountry. Last night was very similar to the night before. Lows in the upper 30s, rain off and on throughout the evening and night, but the sun has popped out this morning, and I'd love to have a nice sunny day today, although this was supposed to be the day with the highest chance of rain, but it's rained both of the last 2 days, so maybe it's got it out of its system. I do have a little bit of a shorter day today. I'm going to head to the Imperial Meadows, and along the way, if the weather permits, I'm hoping to take a short detour to check out Faithful Falls. I'm going to finish packing up camp, and it'll be time to hit the trail. Boy oh boy, the little Firehole River sure is pretty, sparkling in the sunlight. Looking out into the little Firehole Meadows. Everything is brilliant green. Still some snow in the higher portions. And it is a pretty day so far. Right off the trail is a big patch of snow left. I only see 4 toes here, but with the size of this, it can be nothing other than a bear track. And then right beside it are a couple ungulates. As long as I keep moving at a pace between 2 to 3 miles per hour, most of the mosquitoes can't keep up and only get bit once every couple minutes. But stopping even just for a second, and they swarm. Ahead of me, the skies are Carolina blue with white puffy clouds. But behind me, some big dark grays are developing. Hopefully I can continue to outrun that, and we'll see what happens, huh? Some sweet geyser action down in the basin. pretty wildflowers. Some bright blues, some yellows, and some pale lavenders. I reckon those down there may be part of Imperial Meadows, which is my eventual destination for the day. But I'd still like to do the detour to Fairy Falls if this storm will hold off for me. Well, ain't I a lucky fella? My second hailstorm in as many days. This time, I'm not in my tent trying to hope for a little shelter from this tree, but many of these hail are larger than pea size. This tree has protected me pretty well. Let's see how long it can hold out. Shouts out to that tree right on the left of the trail. Kept me sheltered during the hailstorm. I appreciate it, buddy. The circle of life. There's some neat backcountry thermal activity out here. This is obviously the kind of area where you want to stay right on the trail. The steam's so thick, but this geyser is actively throwing up water in there. I enjoyed a lunch watching the Imperial Geyser during the hailstorm. It's been erupting for at least an hour now. It's taken two about 30-second breaks, but then it just fires right back up. Figure it's got to be a pretty unique experience to get to watch this geyser erupt in the middle of a hailstorm, huh? There's a geyser popping off in the distance as well. Wow, I'm guessing that is a far-away look at Fairy Falls. I'm excited to get closer. Fairy Falls, well worth the mile detour. That is a long waterfall. Finished up my detour along the Fairy Falls trail. Now I'm heading back into the backcountry on my route to take me to the Imperial Meadows campsite. It started to rain again, but what's new, huh? Let's take a 360-degree look around at Imperial Meadows. It's a bit marshy out here, which is not a surprise for a meadow in June. Obviously there are mosquitoes. There's the Twin Buttes in front of the storm clouds, and then we'll see Fairy Falls bombing down the mountain. I think I see a bear box right through there. So I may be closing in on camp because I know there's a bear box at my camp tonight. Pretty open through the meadow and around the campsite, and there's a lot of lightning in the sky right now. So I'm going to hang tight in this little bushel of trees until the lightning passes, and then I'll go snag camp. Home sweet home. I'm going to get set up in this little protective corral made to OD3 Imperial Meadows. There's my bear box, and I want to go ahead and get my tent up before any more rain and hail come down. Fairy Creek, the lifeblood of Imperial Meadows,
is an amalgamation of the water that makes it 200 feet down Fairy Falls and the output from Imperial Geyser. There's a brief lull in the storm in which I'm going to try to eat some dinner, but first just taking a 360-degree look around this incredible Imperial Meadows campsite. Of course, Fairy Falls making an appearance. Imperial Geyser throwing off steam in the back. The Twin Buttes looking like the twin butts. And then as we continue around, there's just thermal steam in many directions, huge clouds of it. I mean, this is Yellowstone. Day 3 has been another great day, despite once again battling my two biggest challenges, the weather and the mosquitoes. Awesome day of hiking. Fairy Falls exceeded my expectations, and Imperial Geyser was an awesome surprise. I sat and watched it erupt for about an hour as another hailstorm battened down. We've got another storm coming in once again. I'm going to get settled in, and that'll be the end of day 3. Good night. I just got up this morning, a very foggy day, and some elk are taking advantage of the fog to maneuver across Imperial Meadows. I see 4 of them. Ooh, 2 just started running. Fog's cleared a little bit, so there's a better look at the front 2. One's bigger, one's smaller. The other 2 I've lagged behind a little bit grazing. There are the back 2. I popped in my tent for a moment to start getting packed up, and when I came out, the whole herd has appeared right to the left of Fairy Falls.
Good morning. Made it to day 4 in the Yellowstone backcountry, the final day of my trip. Last night was the warmest of the trip. It stayed in the 40s, and in the evening, once the hail and the rain had moved out, the temperature had dropped enough to where the mosquitoes did not want to emerge again, and I got to spend a wonderful hour or 2 enjoying the beautiful scenery, listening to the falls, watching the thermal steams. All the birds that live in the meadows were fluttering around, and there was a glorious 2-minute period where the sun popped out and bathed everything in gold. This morning I've been enjoying this herd of grazers who are currently grazing over my right shoulder. They don't seem to be too worried about me. They'll look up every once in a while and make sure I'm not getting any closer and that kind of thing, but they're doing their morning activity, getting some breakfast in. I've completed my breakfast as well, and I have 2 options today. I can either do a 9-mile route out or a 5-mile route out, and what I choose is going to depend on the weather and the trail conditions. The weather is self-explanatory. I'm kind of tired of being in the rain and the hail, so if something like that starts back up again, I'll choose a shorter route. And the trail conditions on the longer route, a good portion of that extra 4 miles goes right through a wetland, and it has been very rainy recently, so if those trails conditions are too poor, I may just decide to do the 5-mile route. We'll see what's down the road, and it's time to hit the trail. One last look at the herd before I head out. Right now I see 6 in the open meadow. I did spot a few more earlier. They must have gone back into the trees. So here is my fork in the roads, where I make the decision to go 5 or 9. Weather's looking pretty beautiful. Reckon I'll take a chance on the trail conditions and start out on the 9-mile route. If things go bad, I can always come back. Well, not 5 minutes after I declared to try the longer route, I popped out to the wetlands and
It's exactly what I'd feared. It's just a big marsh with streams crisscrossing through it. It's just been so wet recently that I'm not really expecting to be able to make it through the meadow. So I'm going to turn around and do the 5-mile route after all. On the shores of Goose Lake. I'm a little disappointed to not do the full 9 miles, but going through that wetlands would have been no fun, maybe not even possible. Popped out to an expansive overlook of the Firehole River. There's some fishermen heading down to the banks here to the right, and then that's the Midway Geyser Basin. I believe the big steam is Grand Prismatic. The Midway Geyser Basin, a big flat here right alongside the Firehole Falls trail. One final look around as I leave the Midway Geyser Basin. Fully back in the front country now. Lots of people. I've got one final half-mile through the woods to finish off the stretch of the Firehole Falls trail in between the Midway Geyser parking and the Mallard Creek Trailhead.
Yellowstone never disappoints. 4 days done and dusted. I thought this was a really creative route. It combined some front country and some back country to provide a real bang for the buck. I think it'd be a great route for a beginner to Yellowstone, someone who felt more comfortable seeing people along the way and not being too far from help or bailout. But what is not for a beginner to Yellowstone is this time of year. I called out the challenge that the weather was going to present at the beginning, and it certainly came through. 3 out of 4 days of rain, 2 out of 4 days of hail. I've been out in Yellowstone multiple times before later in the year, and it's been great to get to see it in an earlier season, but I would definitely recommend, if you're planning a once-in-a-lifetime trip to come out, definitely make it a little later in the year so that you can enjoy some nicer weather. Right now I'm going to head into Idaho for a couple weeks and bang out my first ever backpacking trips in that state, and I'll be back to Yellowstone in July. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Lane's World. Goodbye.
On this trip, I'm using the Yellowstone South map by Beartooth Publishing. Let's take a look at the map for this Yellowstone adventure. Starting at Mallard Creek Trailhead OK9, I took the Mallard Creek Trail out to campsite Mallard Lake Southeast OB2. Day 1 was about 5 miles. Day 2 continued from OB2 along the Mallard Lake Trail by Old Faithful through the Upper Geyser Basin and through the Biscuit Basin down to Mystic Falls and then out to Firehole Falls campsite OD3. Day 2 was about 12 miles. Day 3 continuing from campsite OD3 down to the Firehole Falls trail to check out Firehole Falls and back, and then along to Imperial Meadows campsite OD4. Day 3 was about 9 miles. Day 4 continued from OD4 along the Firehole Falls trail, a short cutoff to the bike route, and then down to finish off the last half mile to return to the Mallard Creek Trailhead. Day 4 was about 5 miles for a trip total of a little over 30 miles.